Hello everybody, welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips, and we'll start out with a little COVID madness here. I have a friend, I'm reading this email that came from somebody, an 85-year-old widow who lives alone on a farm in Jasper, New York. An Amish neighbor with a heart condition, no medical insurance, asked her to give him a ride to a nurse practitioner. When there, she was asked to take him immediately to the ER. At the ER, the doctor declared him COVID-19 positive and then sent him home. He was not tested, and the doctor said he could tell he had COVID-19 by looking at him. My friend was put in 14-day quarantine supervised by the Steuben County Sheriff with daily visits to make sure she's complying. And she was told that if the sheriff came to the door and she did not answer, he would have to break it down. The same night, the Steuben County cases increased by 1. Cases, not deaths. Note that the man had no symptoms, has had none, and yet all of this. Because the doctor could tell, you have COVID, I can tell by looking at you. And remember, if you test and test and test and test, I did a video clip on this last week, you should just use your intuition and say, COVID, I knew it. Again, I'm just astounded at the people that are watching this kind of thing and going, yeah, this is good, very good public policy. I'm not afraid of this hoax, nor are some of my friends, but the young people are terrified. The order is to obey the rules. One friend is locked in her home and not allowed out because she visited with some friends and had coffee. That is bad. You should know better. Having coffee with friends, are you nuts? I mean, who does that? They don't need to hire an army of contact tracers because the grandchildren are doing it for free. And this is a story, I'm going to summarize this, but the bottom line is that this woman in Illinois, in a county in Illinois, which is ruled by the Emperor Pritzker, who waddles to the podium every day to deliver his edicts of the moment, which his children and wife don't abide by because they're the rulers. That's for the simple people, the rules, right? Well, anyway, she had heard about the death rate in her county. It all sounded suspicious, so she called the local health department and asked for, well, the first thing she did, she called the local health department and said where the statistics came from. They referred her to the website, and the last time the website was updated was 2007. So she called again and was forwarded to somebody else, and the person was very inquisitive. Who are you and why do you want to know? And of course, I'm a citizen, I just want to know. It seems like the numbers don't make any sense, so I want to talk to somebody about it. The woman asked the person she was talking to if she'd heard of contact tracing, and the woman said she was doing that right now. When they got the first positive COVID case, they started doing the contact tracing, because when one person has the flu, you better start figuring out everybody that person came in contact with, of course. So anyway, so she again pressed for information. She was told to go to the internet, but the internet wasn't updated since 2007. So she was eventually referred to the coroner, and he asked, who are you, why are you calling, and what are your credentials? And again, just, you know, your data are terrorizing people, and I just want to know where it came from, this poor woman is saying. And the rich part about it, before he hung up on her and said, you're probably not going to vote for me, and just hung up, he said, he referred her, he said that you sound like one of those people who gets all your information from the internet, which is interesting because all the people she tried to call in the health department were telling her, go to the internet for the information, which was last updated in 2007. So anyway, it's interesting, all of this, and it just goes to, you just wonder, what is going on in the minds of people who are watching this and going, yes, yes, indeed, this is good. You sound like a conspiracy theorist. You should go to the internet. The internet is wrong? Well, you must be a conspiracy theorist because the internet is always right, except for when it's not right, obviously. All right. So let's talk about some consequences, usually part of the Friday discussion. This comes from a woman who's living in Florida and the rest of her family is in Quebec. And this is horrific. Last Monday, my sister called me crying and very distraught. She'd been called by the retirement home where my father lived. They told her they'd found my father non-responsive and rushed him to the hospital. She wasn't allowed to go to the hospital yet, but they asked her if she could come clean his room while he was not there. And the woman says, we pay extra fee for that cleaning service. The sister gets there to find food and beverages all over his room with mold on it, stinking and rotting. She found his dirty Depends diapers everywhere, under the bed, the couch, the bathroom. She spent half the day cleaning this mess while crying. Following day, the doctor calls her saying there was nothing they could do, and since he was terminal, now she could come and visit. She was never able to have a coherent conversation with him the whole week, and he passed a week later. Since this whole nonsense started, all she could do is stand in the parking lot while he peeked out the window of his third-story window, and she'd say, "How's everything?" and he'd respond, "Fine." She couldn't see the mess in his room. He wasn't eating and he was withering away, something she would have noticed if she were able to visit him as usual. The residents in the home went from a routine of going to the cafeteria 3 times a day and eating and socializing with friends, and eating their favorite foods. In this particular case, the woman's father didn't have teeth, so they would give him soft eggs and juice and soup and mashed potatoes. He socialized with friends and spent time on the patio. And then one day he was in prison, confined to a small room for months. He got too lonely to cope with this, and he gave up and stopped eating. And they were bringing him coffee that he doesn't drink in the first place and fruits he couldn't chew, while lying in his own waste in a room full of rotting food and filled Depends diapers all over, under the bed, under the couch, and on the floor. And people criticize me for calling these people nitwits and criminals who do this. Really? I'm criticizing you. I want a person who can defend this. Come here and please talk to me about it. Tell me what the defense is of this. Our neighbor lost a family member in New York to a stroke. He had a massive stroke, collapsed, and hit his head. He died hours later from his head injury. Guess what his cause of death was on the death certificate? COVID. They were unable to gather as a family for the funeral. That's some good public health. Lie on the death certificate and tell the family they can't have a funeral. You know, words, I don't know what words to use to describe people like this. I'm hoping at some point in time, lawsuits are important. Criminal trials are really important, and these people should be held criminally responsible for things like this. Here's one. I'm mad as hell. The intent of this statement is to share with you and all others involved that the regulatory taking without compensation of my businesses in the emergency period has been misused and abused by Governor Jay Inslee of Washington State. I call him the emperor. The original intent of the 2-week stay-at-home order was to slow the spread of COVID-19 virus from China. Judging by the infection numbers, death rates of actual COVID patients in the counties affected, Jay Inslee has intentionally killed my livelihood, and I demand it stops now. We are in the 11th week of a 2-week shutdown. I am mad as hell that I have had to take 2 loans against my business that I have painstakingly built 7 days a week for the past 24 years. I'm mad as hell that at 50 years old, the term on the SBA loan puts the payoff on my 80th birthday. These new loans may not even save my businesses because the reopening of our county has been batted around as a toy by our governor and king, Inslee. This is not a game. This is life and death for us, and I am mad as hell. When asked to be a good citizen and flatten the curve, and then I hear we're all in this together, my blood boils because I know it's political bull excrement at this point, and I'm mad as hell. We are not in this together. If we were, there would be a remedy post-haste. I have laid off all 63 employees that have families, mortgages, rents, diapers, food, and the list goes on. The extended actions of Jay Inslee have put their lives in danger. How dare you, Jay? His orders have crushed my $3 million a year business with a payroll of more than $1.4 million because we are deemed non-essential. By scaring our communities to the point of endless isolation, the future of my business is now in jeopardy. My businesses and all other small businesses are getting crushed by the allowance of the big box stores' operations. Who needs to run a sale on plasma TVs during this crisis? The effects will be felt by the next generation of small business leaders, if there are any left, with the guts or ignorance to attempt it. We have been patient up to this point, but we will wait no longer. Since we were unable to open this past weekend for Memorial Day and begin to dig out of this mess, it was a slap in the face of every soldier that laid down their life for the freedoms we celebrate. If I lose my life's work to Jay Inslee's ignorance and arrogance by no damaging act of my own, there will be restitution due. And how you can possibly think that this collateral damage is okay. I mean, maybe you just don't care about people and their life's work and their livelihoods and their payrolls of 63 people. How can you not? What kind of person doesn't care? Well, I hope you care about this. Doctors at John Muir Medical Center in Walnut Creek, California, reported on May 21st that there were more deaths by suicide during the quarantine than deaths from COVID-19. The head of trauma, Dr. Mike DeBoisblanc, says it's time to end the shelter-in-place order. He says it is clear that the hospitals are not overwhelmed and that there are adequate resources to take care of COVID patients, and the rest of the community is suffering. Quote, "We've never seen numbers like this in such a short period of time. We have seen a year's worth of suicide attempts in the last 4 weeks." Casey Hansen has worked as a trauma nurse at John Muir Medical Center for almost 33 years. She's worried because not only are they seeing more suicide attempts, she says they are not able to save as many patients as usual. Hansen and Dubois Blank say they are seeing mostly young adults die by suicide. They're worried about the stress that isolation and job loss can bring as this quarantine continues. So you out there, you believers, you masked gutless wonders hiding in your basement, more people killing themselves than dying of COVID-19. Think about that for a minute in your self-righteous little bubble that you live in. All right, next one. Firstly, thank you for continuing to share sanity. I've shared your links with people as much as I can, but some people are content to remain ignorant and compliant, as we know. I just thought you might find the following both amusing and sad at the same time. The other day, I went into one of our small local shops to use the self-service machine to print off a label and send a parcel. The shop has only recently reopened, and of course there are plexiglass screens and an air of siege about the place, a little ironic since it sells alcohol products, which if consumed in excess are probably worse for your health than any virus. Anyway, there were only 2 people in the place, myself as a customer and the assistant, who by the look on her face was clearly taking everything very seriously and enjoying her newfound sense of power in directing the public. I walked in and went to the machine, and as I started to type in the information, she said, "For future reference, there are direction arrows on the floor. Could you walk round following them?" Indeed, on inspection, there were. I had not noticed. "But there are only 2 of us in the shop," I said. "It's irrelevant." "No," she said. "It's very important." "No, it isn't," I replied. "There's no one else here." Then she said in a very official tone, "Well, I'll let you off this time, but you can remember for next time." Needless to say, I may go in to use the machine, but I won't be spending any money there in the future. What sanctions she proposes to apply, I'm not sure. What is the punishment for not following the arrows? I almost want to try it myself sometime just to see. Are they going to beat me? Have they established concentration camps that we don't know about yet? And I'm going to be taken to some type of holding facility and starved until I agree to always walk on the arrows? I mean, this is such nonsense. And the guy finishes his email with classic example of mindless adherence to rules which make little sense, but it makes you look as if you're doing something important. I'm a store clerk and I make sure people are following the arrows. Boy, that's some self-righteous nonsense. If that makes you feel good about yourself, darling, you are in for a very, very unhappy life. This last one will break your heart. It's a video I watched online. The guy's name is John Fenn. He's the founder of Church Without Walls. And he said he wasn't coming to the public to talk about his ministry. He wanted to talk about being a husband and father. His son, Chris, was handicapped. He is handicapped. He lives in a group home. And he was born with an umbilical cord around his neck. He grew up in the family home, and at a certain point in time, the parents realized, because he was mentally only 4 years old, that they really did not have the capacity to take care of him, and they put him in a very good group home that is operated by a company that I think he mentioned in the video has like 52 of these facilities. Well, anyway, or several of these facilities. Anyway, the boy has lost 52 pounds in 71 days. So to date, there is no COVID in any of the homes that are operated by this particular company where John's son is. But the rules are that there is no visitation at the group homes or any residential facility, actually. They've lumped nursing homes in with facilities like this that often house much younger people who are not at particular risk of contracting the virus and or dying from it. So the only way that the parents can see him, they last saw him physically on March 21st, and they're able to talk by phone and by Zoom. They have been able to tell for some time that he was going downhill. They used to have 20-minute conversations, and now 2 or 3 minutes, and he's just not engaged. Now, what's interesting is the staff comes and goes in these places. That's okay, but the parents can't come and go. The staff also took the residents to a park, but the parents can't pick up their kids and take them to a park and bring them back. Only the staff is allowed to do that. And he said that they told him that if he were to take his son to the park and bring him back, that they'd have to quarantine his son for 14 days. So this kid is already, or young man has already lost 52 pounds in 71 days. He might just starve himself to death if locked down with no human interaction. And the father makes the point that when you're dealing with somebody who is an adult but mentally 4 years old, a person who's mentally intact, you can explain why they're locked down. Now, they still may suffer terribly from it, but you cannot explain to the person who has the mental capacity of a 4-year-old why this is going on. This young man hasn't seen his parents since March 21st. There used to be, the facility used to allow up to 60 overnight visits, so that once a week the parents could take him home, and he sleeps in his bedroom and watches cartoons in the morning. They bring him back, and then for Christmas and Thanksgiving and that sort of thing. So this poor young man's life has been completely interrupted. He doesn't understand it. He's literally starving himself. And the rulers think that that's good, and the self-righteous mask-wearing population who think that this doesn't matter, I guess they think this is all right too. Again, I want to see one of these self-righteous people explain to me why this is okay. And just for the record, every week I get, I don't know, a few hundred, sometimes a couple thousand of these kinds of emails. I select samplings of them, somebody in a nursing home, somebody misdiagnosed, that sort of thing, because obviously I can't read all of them to you. So these aren't isolated cases. We have thousands of these documented on our server. So I'm interested, I'd like for the Empress Amy Acton in Ohio to explain herself. I'd love to have just one of the ruling class get in front of a press conference and say, today I am going to address the collateral damage. And I'm going to tell you why it is okay for old people in a nursing home to live in their own excrement and starve to death. I'm going to tell you why I think it's okay for a mentally challenged young adult to not see his parents or have human contact from family for months at a time, can't go to the park. I'm going to lay out my justification for it, but none of them are. The criminal Fauci doesn't do it. Dr. Birx doesn't do it. The Emperor DeWine, the Emperor Inslee, none of these people do it. They have no explanation. They just never have to explain themselves. Till my dying day, I'm going to make sure that they have to do that. In a court of law, in a criminal court, I don't care. Any court of law, I would just like to see these people on the witness stand and lay out how they justified this type of collateral damage. It's inexcusable. Inexcusable. And anybody who thinks that this is okay, I label you a co-conspirator in the criminal activities to harm people. Think about that. All right, well, I think that's enough for this week. My email address is pampopper@msn.com. Don't forget, free emails, free video clips. We have my next video Zoom free session, I do a couple of them a month, is scheduled for Friday the 26th at noon, your Eastern time. You're welcome to participate in one of those if you're not a member. Members get to have a lot of access to Q&As and educational programs with me. If you're interested in careers, I'd like to talk about professional development, please get in touch with me. As usual, pass this on to people who you think would benefit from getting educated about this very important issue, and I'll be back to you next week with more news.